In 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to the finishing up the board's work session for November 6th, 2020. And we're continuing on with the budget. And this one is regarding treatment sales tax, or TST, follow-up. So going to go right to Robin.
So thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon. We are going to talk this afternoon about treatment sales tax, and I am going to turn this over to Carrie Hedden. She is our treatment sales tax program manager. When we reviewed treatment sales tax, you had quite a few questions, and we hope to address those this afternoon.
Do we have a handout for this?
I don't have.
If you have your budget binder, Commissioner.
Go back to the binder? Okay.
Yeah, if you can go to the TST side, that might be helpful. That will be on tab 29.
I got it right here. All right, go right ahead. Thank you. Tab what? 29?
I believe so, unless I misread that. Yeah, 29.
Mine goes up to 22. Well, go ahead, and I will do what I can to catch up. What binder are you looking at, Romero?
Is the binder where we had all the budget briefings? It's titled 2021 Budget Development.
21 budget, 2020. I have 21 budget development, 2021 budget development. But I don't go to tab 29. I go up to 25.
You have about tab 29?
I'll tell you here in 1 second. I've got a different book.
Oh, yeah, it says 29. But
I do have 29.
Wait a minute. Never mind. There we go.
Do you find it?
I'm tracking. Got it.
Okay.
It was hidden behind the sheriff. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Apologize for the delay, but that's life. Okay.
All right. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Carrie Hennon, Public Health and Social Services. When we last spoke, we spent quite a bit of time on TST, and I think we still ended up with quite a few questions. So I don't know exactly where you want me to start. So Robin, you had mentioned you thought it might be helpful to share last year's 2019 TST annual report. I'm happy to do that unless that's too much context. We can start there. We can walk through the numbers again. We had sent earlier this week a revised financial plan and kind of a spreadsheet that was another way of looking at the committee recommendations. And I don't know if that's in binders or not. So I'm happy to talk about any and all of these things. And any guidance on where you'd like me to start would be great.
So Carrie, who was that information sent to?
So I think Marcia and I sent it to the whole, so Denise, Patty, Olivia team, and Mate possibly Robin.
Okay, I see it came in on Monday. All right, from Marcia.
We can make copies if.
We'll get copies made right away.
Okay. Would you like me to start with the annual report that I can kind of share the screen and would be easier to look at?
Yes. That would
without having hard copies in front of you?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so this is sort of truly context, but I think some of the questions that came up last time were sort of a little bit further in terms of like, well, what do we get for all this funding anyway? I've sort of gone through a very long laundry list of many programs. And in the past, we have briefed the commissioners on an annual report this year. Earlier this year, never briefed you on the 2019 annual report. So I will go through this relatively quickly, but just sort of as kind of background, kind of more general answer to what have we been funding and what have we been getting for it anyway type questions. So, so in 2019, this is sort of a overall summary page. You see, I'm assuming you can see my screen. Some thumbs up. Things are okay. Good. So we had about $6.4 million in revenue, and we spent $6.4 million. We couldn't have come closer if we had tried. $200 difference or something like that. Sort of amazing. We served, with an asterisk, 5,400 people. The asterisk is actually a pretty significant one, which is that there is duplication in that number. We know that quite a few people are served by more than one TST funded program, and we don't have client level data to deduplicate that. So we know that that number, that's more than the real number. We did note that in the report. We don't know exactly how much duplication. I would guess it's a good 20% or something, but we don't know exactly. 21 programs operated through county offices and departments, 12 programs operated through what was in 2019, the Thurston Mason BHO, Behavioral Health Organization. And then at different points in the year, there were 5 community grants. This is the RFP process where we make smaller grants to community-based organizations. The bottom half of this page breaks down a little bit, again, at a pretty high level in terms of who was served. The population served through TST programs is quite a bit more heavily male than female. This is largely because the programs serving the largest number of people are our law and justice programs, particularly our jail-based programs. We serve, you see the age breakdown, about 20% under the age of 18, 16% that young adult category, and then the really big bulk of the population is age 25 to 54, and then a smaller group of older adults. Bottom of the page, TST funded programs served individuals from all over Thurston County. And then 2019 was the first year we collected data on race and ethnicity. You can see a breakdown there. I would point out that there's quite a bit of data missing. So for race, 29%, their race was not reported. For ethnicity, 39% was not reported. So that's a area of improvement for us. So hopefully this year we'll have a little bit more complete data. Onward. Here's our nice big long laundry list, but we've tried to sort of categorize it into a couple different chunks. So TST, as you know, funds our treatment courts. So the adult treatment courts, there's DUI, drug court, DUI court, mental health court, veterans court, and then the associated legal services through the prosecuting attorney's office and public defense. All of that accounted for about $1.6 million in 2019. Next big chunk of programs, 11 youth and family programs on which TST spent about $2.2 million. Those include programs operated through Superior Court, Juvenile Court, PHSS, and the BHO. I won't read every single one to you, but lots of different programs serving youth and families. Next, large chunk of programs, about $2 million. Other adult programs, so not the treatment courts, but a lot of other programs serving adults, including quite a long list of programs in our jail, as well as some more community-based programs through the BHO, programming through pretrial services, district court, and public defense. And then finally, that those community grants at the bottom, those there were 5 during the year, kind of turning over in the middle of the year, and that accounted for $225,000 spent roughly, and then administration of TST. So TST program manager, TST data analyst, some training funds, that was about $269,000. So that's our, again, big long laundry list. TST funds a lot of great stuff, serving a lot of different populations throughout the community and in our correctional facility. So the rest of this report, and I assume you don't want me to go in excruciating detail, but kind of goes through each of these, what I'm calling chunks. So the treatment courts, then the youth and family programs, then the adult programs. So I will kind of walk through that and give you a flavor of the type of data that we collect. This is a subset, though there's a lot of charts and graphs in this document. This is a subset of all the data we collect. We do collect quite a bit of data, and the TST funded programs are very diligent about gathering and reporting that data, and the advisory committee is very diligent about reviewing that. So back to that first group of programs, the treatment courts. So again, we have drug court, DUI court, mental health court, veterans court. The upper left shows us the number of clients that were served, not only in 2019, but also for the couple years prior to that. So you can see a little bit of trend information. On the lower right-hand portion of that page, again, this is a subset of all the data we collect. We wanted to give sort of a flavor of some of the performance measures that we look at and talk about. So for the treatment courts, we've really highlighted graduation rates as being something that we talk about often, as well as recidivism. And then the pie chart over on the left-hand side, leveraging funds. So this is rolled up across this category, but something kind of interesting about TST, and you'll see it play out differently on the following pages. In certain places, TST funds kind of the whole program, or in the treatment court case, really kind of everything that really touches that program. And then in other areas, TST can be really strategically blended with other fund sources, such as Medicaid. And we hope then that kind of allows us to stretch our TST to have a little bit more impact. So here in the treatment court area, you'll see that TST funds 92% of our treatment court programming. So again, kind of the vast majority of the treatment courts, those are called out in the TST statute. So it's, pretty clear that TST is going to be heavily invested there. Should I be pausing for questions, Commissioner? No, keep going. Okay.
Yep, keep going, Carrie. Thank you.
Okay. Youth and family programs, lots of these programs, so kind of a long list. The font's probably getting a little small for you to read, I would guess. So again, these are programs through the Thurston Mason BHO, through Superior Court, Juvenile Court, Public Health and Social Services. Again, you see this, just the number of clients served over the years. And then on the lower right-hand side, a subset of the performance measures that we collect. So a lot of these measures are really about engagement in treatment, how many assessments were provided, some more kind of outcome level data where we're able to, based on some validated assessment tools, report on things like, do programs have an impact in the number of youth who are talking about suicide or using alcohol, using marijuana. So you'll see a subset of the performance data that we collect reported here. And then on that leveraging funds pie chart, this one is really flipped from the one you saw previously. In this case, most of these programs, particularly the programs through the BHO, bring a lot of other non-TST funding into the program itself. So TST is only funding a slice of these whole programs. Particularly these youth treatment-focused programs really do blend together TST and Medicaid funding to kind of make the program operate. Okay. Next page, we have so many adult programs. We had to do 2 pages on them. So these are the adult programs that that take place in our jail. So all of these are either operated and overseen by the sheriff's office, with one exception. This jail behavioral health program clearly takes place in the jail, but it is overseen by our BHO, now our BHASO. So all kinds of, again, in-jail services, chemical dependency program. The jail behavioral health program is the really crisis response, mental health professionals in the jail, preparing for reentry employment. is quite a nice self-explanatory title to that program. We fund a portion of the psych ARMP services in the jail, some reentry work, etc. So again, you see kind of trends in the number of individuals served through these programs and a subset of the performance data we collect. In this case, we're looking at, how many interventions are conducted in the facility and really looking at the, as much as we can, kind of this handoff issue as individuals exit the jail. Are they connected to treatment? Are they connected to housing? So that's something that we're kind of always looking at. Next, the rest of the adult programs. So these are other programs serving adults, more community-based programs or other law and justice system, but these are the programs that are not in the jail. So some housing, a probation counselor that's really very treatment focused, some services in the Nisqually jail, pretrial services, diversion, mitigation through public defense, and a small amount of funding for a individual who serves veterans. Again, you see your information on number of clients served and some highlighted performance data. So in these housing programs, are we actually successfully placing folks in housing? Are assessments being conducted where that's the goal of a program? How many individuals, the Nisqually jail program, are folks connected to treatment when they leave that facility? So one of the things about TST, because we fund so many different types of programs, we have lots of different performance measures. They are tailored to the individual programs, which makes sense because the programs are very different, and it makes it a little bit hard when you're sort of trying to get this sort of global sense of what is the impact of all of these funds going out. Reflections and future goals. As always, I would be remiss if I did not thank the wonderful members of the TST Advisory Committee. Again, we are joined by a couple of them today, and then this just provides a few highlights on some of the work we did in 2019. If you think that was a lot of data, you could see about 10 times as much by going to this interactive data dashboard that is linked here. We periodically bring together all the TST funded programs with the advisory committee and really review data, talk about what's working with programs, where are gaps, what are some of the challenges. So that was something we highlighted from 2019, launched some new programs. And then goals for 2020, we are doing it with that last goal there, develop a recommendation from the advisory committee to the Board of County Commissioners on the allocation of TST funds. So there you have it. The 2019 TST annual report, a bit belated. So I can stop my share of that, I think. Questions on that? I hope that was helpful background and the appropriate level of detail. There's lots more where all of that came from if you want. Yeah.
Before I get to the commissioners, I just want to also applaud your advisory committee. It's tedious, cumbersome, interesting, and vital, important work. So thank you, Carrie, and all the team members that are, I see some here. Ty, do you have any questions or comments?
I just have some questions, I guess, about certain programs. I could probably find out for myself, but there's one in particular I wanted to ask about. I think Commissioner Edwards and I are both interested in the intersection between the jail and the mental health. And one of your programs listed out there was Jail Behavioral Health Program. And I was just wondering if you could tell us how much money is spent there, how many people are doing that? Is there a need for more people doing that? How is that working?
Great question. So that program in 2020, TST has actually quite a lot more funding directed to that program than we ever have in the past. So I'll give you kind of a little bit of history. So TST has for many years had about $90,000 funding kind of a portion of that service, running always through the BHO. That was contracted through by the BHO through a community-based provider. That was the case through, I guess it kind of started transitioning during 2019. With the BHO's transition to being an ASO, with the kind of pinch on their non-Medicaid services and non-Medicaid funding, they saw that coming and said, hey, in 2020, we're not going to be able to put as much additional non-Medicaid funding into the jail. So they had used TST and they had put in a whole bunch of other non-Medicaid funding through 2019 to kind of fully fund that program. They, in our budget cycle 2 years ago, said, hey, in 2020, we're not going to have that much money. They requested more TST funding, so that TST is funding now over about, I think, $430,000 compared to $90,000 before. And the other change that was made was, so Olympic Health and Recovery, which, as you know, is the direct service kind of arm of our ASO, is now operating that program directly instead of contracting it out to a community-based provider. The advantage of them operating that directly is it can now be integrated with their True Blood team, funded by a separate source, but there is, it creates some economies of scale and some kind of clinical continuity. So if there are individuals who are identified or assessed or served by the True Blood team, they don't have to be handed off to a completely separate provider if they're kind of not diverted from the facility, staying in the facility, and need those kind of ongoing mental health professional services. And there's kind of the same program management, same supervision of the True Blood team and this TST funded group of, I would have to look up, I don't want to say exactly the number of FTEs. We have a few, 2 to 3 mental health professionals and a peer that we're funding through that. But I could get back to you on those exact numbers. It is more when you said, is that enough? Do we need more? Always a good question. It is more capacity than we had in the past. That doesn't necessarily mean it's enough, of course, but it's more. The peer was not funded. As of a couple of years ago, the peer was not funded. So it's more capacity than we've had in the past. And of course, any question, I think, about jail-based services right now, though hopefully temporary, needs to be looked at through the COVID lens. So the census in the facility is obviously quite a bit lower than it was previously. Helpful?
Yeah, it's helpful. And can you concisely characterize the scope of the services that are provided? I mean, do folks go in there and directly provide mental health treatment the way they would if they were out of the jail, or are they doing something else to help them navigate re-entry, or what exactly are they providing?
So that program really is the clinical service. There are other programs that are more navigating, connecting to treatment, what's going to happen to people when they leave. But what we're now calling the jail behavioral health program is really clinical services. A lot of it is the crisis interventions. And what they always said in the past was, we're so busy doing crisis work, we don't have time to do any actual really therapeutic work. When we expanded capacity, the idea was do that crisis work. Who's really like in danger today, but also have capacity to do some groups, some more therapeutic type interventions. That really was kind of just getting going over the past year. And so, COVID has been tricky with some of that in terms of who's essential, who has ongoing access. But I think that the capacity is there to do both just the basic crisis intervention and as well as some therapeutic work. And then the other stuff you're asking about, the more case management-y, connections, reentry planning, all of that is through some of the other programs that you saw on that corrections page.
So just to tie this in a bow, it sounds like the jury's still out to a degree on whether or not, we've got the adequate capacity. We have bumped that up, and there's, because I'd like to see the ability for them to do real treatment, not just managing crises, but trying to actually help people, move forward and be more ready to re-enter. So sounds like we kind of need to maybe wait and see where that lands 2021. Thank you.
Yep.
Gary, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I think I've got it. My sentiments with what you said and what Ty asked. So I think, I know Ty and I are interested in seeing about alleviating that jail population possibly without adding jail space if we can. And I think that's a future discussion that we're going to have. What can benefit that whole concept as we move forward. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Carrie, my question goes back to one of the beginnings, the beginning of your presentation. You talked about it's difficult to figure out the cost or whatever per person because they utilize so many services. But is there a way to take client A, B, and C, maybe 2 or 3 or 4, and because they may touch mental health court, they may touch drug court or veterans court, but they also have jail services. They also have BHASO and other services. Is there a way to follow 2 or 3 of those folks and maybe extrapolate the costs per person? Or is that just way too far-fetched to figure that out?
So following a whole cohort of those people would be challenging unfortunately, in the data systems we have. I guess to challenge or to follow 2 or 3 of those people is theoretically possible with all the right releases of information, etc. And then the whole question would be, what would you learn from 2 or 3 people, and would it be representative, etc. But those are great questions. If we had, this goes to, when you look at what the state is able to do with their integrated data system that touches a whole bunch of systems, they can answer questions about people accessing multiple systems over time. King County, with their version of the treatment sales tax, gets integrated client level data. They can match it to their Medicaid data, to jail booking data, Harborview emergency department data, and do some really cool things. We don't get client level data. We don't quite have that. I love those questions. I wish we could answer those questions. Maybe someday we will answer those questions, but I would say there's some decent hurdles to really get there.
And absent what we just mentioned about releases and all that and whatnot, and your capacity to do that, do we at least have the capability of following one client or each client and see how many services they do touch? Or is that just
not really, unfortunately?
Okay, then I'm done. I'm done with my questions. Thank you. Good update. Very good update. Skip, thank you for joining us too. Anything else, commissioners or Romero or Robin?
Not from me, thank you.
Robin, nothing? Okay. Any last minute comments, Carrie?
No. Do you want to talk about the financial plan, or did you have questions about the budget recommendation itself, or are we?
Yeah.
I want to Skip if Skip wants to weigh in. Skip, you have anything to say? Yeah, do you have anything you'd like to offer or proffer? Once you unmute yourself. Thank you.
Sorry, I couldn't tell for sure. Were you asking me?
Yes, I am.
Uh-oh.
You joined us. Do you have anything to offer or add?
No. Part of the reason is I wasn't sure what the thrust of this meeting was, and I joined a few minutes late. So I think anything I say might or might not be on target. But thank you for asking. I do appreciate that.
And thank you for joining us. We appreciate you taking the time.
And just to recognize, we do have 3 other advisory committee members here with us. Wendy Tanner, Bob Jones, and Gina Thompson are also on the Zoom
Okay,
today. I think others might even be YouTubing.
And I see Wendy, I didn't know who else might be on. I just don't see them on the
Yeah.
screen.
Right. Yeah, I know it's hard to get everybody all at once.
There we go. Well, since I reached out, Skip, I got to reach the others. And Wendy, anything?
I don't think so. I do think that these are questions that we ask, but I wonder about whether this is data that we would get or whether the program staff would provide, because a lot of the programs are only funding a portion. So I don't know if we get all the data or just a portion of the data for some programs. It's all very inconsistent.
Okay. Gina?
Well, Hutch, I appreciate you asking. I do not have anything to add.
Okay, thank you. And Bob?
Hi there. Thank you for what you do for us out here, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to advise you on the treatment sales tax. I have a lot of familiarity with the Veterans Court. I can tell you one thing, I think the money is being well spent, and I would guess that we as a county are probably doing a good job of implementing what the intent of treatment sales tax was all about. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Well,
Yep.
Robin knows how near and dear TST is to me. And so thank you all for joining us. That's kind of cool that you joined in on the conversation as well. Carrie, if you have more to present on the financial, Robin, is that where we need to go, or what's your expectation of us?
So the financial piece is next. You'd asked programmatic questions that Carrie addressed, I hope, through the program report. Then you'd asked about the financial plan, so we have that ready to go. And then you'd asked about how the recommendations were made. So Carrie's got some information on that, but I think we should take a very quick pause and see where we're at with the printouts.
Okay.
So if you wouldn't mind, and I apologize to all our guests.
We'll check. Is it in the printer? We'll check and distribute.
Yeah, but let's
Want to go check it?
I would like to take a few minutes just to go check and see where we're at.
5 minutes?
Five should be plenty.
We're taking a 5-minute break then. Thank you. Carrie again, or you, Robin?
And 3, 2, 1, you're it.
Okay, we're back from break. We have the paperwork and we're ready to rock and roll. Seatbelts on. Here we go.
Okay, so we're going to take a look now. You'd asked for some revisions to the financial plan. So Carrie's made those, and I'm going to let Carrie, and I see Marcia is on the line too. I'm going to let them walk you through the updated financial plan. And can one of you share the plan on the screen, or would you like me to?
I'll share my screen if Marcia will do the talking.
Marcia.
And I'll chime in if you, is that okay, Marcia? Okay. Oh, just kidding. Wait.
Hey, I can see you now, Carrie.
I thought I had it open. Oh man, I expressed such confidence. Is that, oh, here we go. Don't update. Is that a financial plan? Can you see it?
Nope,
No, that's not.
That's the policy tool, recommendation tool.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Oh. All right. If anyone else is faster than me, go for it. Let me see. Sorry.
There you go.
Yuri, I've got it up for you. And Marcia?
Awesome.
And
It's on the screen.
Great. Marcia, do you want to kick us off?
So I can start. We tried to minimize the number of modifications to this document. Oh, I'm sorry. Good afternoon, commissioners and our viewing public. My name is Marcia Boyle with Thurston County Public Health and Social Services. I support the fiscal functions here in the department. So what we are looking at here is a modified 10-year financial plan for treatment sales tax. We did a couple of tweaks to the document here from when it was previously shared. The changes primarily consist of updated to the revenues. We increased the revenue back to higher projections just based on the more current sales tax revenues, which are coming in higher than the previous estimates that we were using, which had assumed a downturn in the economy, which Thurston County, for some wonderful reason, is not experiencing the downturn that other sectors are experiencing. The other thing we did modify is in some of the expenditures, we did take into consideration those recommendations being made by the TST Advisory Committee. So if I'm not mistaken, Carrie, down towards the bottom, we've identified what the fund balance would actually look like if we went and moved forward. I should say we, meaning the commissioners, approved all of the advisory board's recommendations. It would adjust the amount of expenditures shown above, which reflect what's currently in Questica and what the departments have requested. So if we accepted all of that, the expenditures would actually be less because the board would be approving some reductions to what board, offices and departments have requested, and therefore it would reduce the burden on the fund balance and would extend the fund balance for more years. Did I capture that correctly, Carrie?
Yes. I'm not muted, am I? No. Okay. It would extend the fund balance a bit longer. It doesn't get it. We still would be spending heavily from the fund balance, just not quite as heavily. So under if the recommendation of the advisory committee is advanced, you're spending almost $1 million less per year. So that just stretches out the fund balance for basically really one more year before you get to that point of, okay, now we're at 3 years cash flow and need to adjust. So yeah, the kind of actual actual body of the financial plan where it says this $9.157 million in column I toward the bottom. That's the full requested amount by the offices and departments. If the board were to approve all of that, that would take $2.7 million out of fund balance in 2021 and take the fund balance down to 2.3 million at the end of 2021. And then by the end of 2022, take you down to basically no fund balance, $196,000, which clearly is not enough to even maintain cash flow needs. If you go a little bit further down where it says adjustment to expenditures, if all advisory committee recommendations are approved, you're spending $940,000 less next year. So your fund balance is $940,000 better at the end of next year. So it just kind of stretches the fund balance out a little bit longer. So,
Hutch, am I going to be able to ask something here?
Yeah, go ahead, Gary.
On the new sheet that you just gave out, it says revenue, I think it is $6,405,000 from the sales tax. Is that right?
That was actual 2019. And then what we did for 2020 was we had been previously assuming a downturn. We've now assumed flat revenue in 2020 compared to 2019.
Okay, I guess my question is, what's the actual revenue so far that you know of? Are we?
The actual is about...
We should be up quite a bit, almost like reflecting in the rest of sales tax activity, shouldn't it?
It's up 4.6%. That said, we do still have several months to go. The way it is accrued, we don't just have... what month are we in? November. We don't just have November and December left to go. We have November, December, January, and February, because the January and February will get accrued back to this year. So I think that we are up year to date, but we're not 10/12ths of the way through the year. We are 8/12ths, 3/4.
I guess the reason I'm asking, reflecting the rest of the sales tax revenue we went over earlier today, does that help us on our projected ending fund balance is what I'm wondering.
If we were to assume not just level revenue from last year, but if we wanted to bump this up by, it would be a couple $100,000. And so, yes, it would.
Okay. Just wondering if we're considering that. Thank you.
So one of the things I would add is that it's interesting to note that even though it's sales tax, the sales tax for treatment sales tax and the sales tax for detention sales tax all behave differently than the general fund sales tax. And the reason for that is different things are taxed under each of these laws. So one of them excludes a tax on motor vehicles. And that is a big source of our revenue right now in the general fund. So when you take away that base, that means that the growth in the fund, the specialty fund, is going to be less than you might think if you're looking at the general fund. It had a deeper downturn when the numbers went low, and I haven't checked the recovery on this fund, but I think it would not be out of line to add a few $100,000 to next year, but this is not necessarily growing at the same rate as the general fund.
Okay, I mean, that's kind of where I was going with that question. And I mean, that's good to know. And I guess from my perspective, I'd kind of like to know which one of those revenue sources are affected by different regulatory things like that. Some point in the future, not right now.
They're all different.
Yeah, yes, but I mean, what the total cumulative number would be because of those differences per month or something, just so I had a better handle on it from my perspective. Thanks.
Ty, you have any questions? Since we're kind of in that period.
Yes, so I see the 5 million spent down to 2.3 for 2021, which then drops, again, precipitously for 2022. I guess my question is, obviously the Board of County Commissioners, we're kind of the ultimate responsibility for the finances of the county, but I guess I'm wondering to what extent the Treatment Sales Tax Advisory Committee looks at that. They made recommendations. Are they just looking at the quality of the policies and giving us kind of a prioritize, or are they also taking into account the fund balance to an extent? Are they recommend? I mean, if I adopt their recommendations, what's the answer for the fact that in 2 years we've spent below cash flow needs? I mean, we can't do that, right? So what is there a middle ground between? I know in the past, Carrie, you've even said that you thought there was a little bit of capacity to expand spending, but it doesn't sound like there's enough capacity to do all the things that were in the advisory committee's recommendation if I look at this financial plan.
So, that was a few different questions. So in terms of what the committee considers, so basically I gave them a number after talking with Robin a few times, looking at the financial plan, talking with Marcia, and I said, we think that in 2021 we can spend this amount of money, and that would the sort of guiding principle that we had was we should spend our fund balance down. We shouldn't blow through it and never be able to fund programs again and have $100,000 fund balance. But we have too big a fund balance to be, $5.6 million is too much fund balance to when there's great need in the community. So our guiding principle was, in my initial conversations with Robin, and I think consistent with other funds, spend the fund balance down to cash flow needs at the end of 2022. Not at the end of 2021, but at the end of 2022. So the advisory committee didn't do sort of all that modeling. They got a number that I said, this is the number I think will get us there. Then we went through our whole process and I said, well, just kidding. Revenue looks better than I thought it did. So you could spend a little more so you can fit a little bit more in the recommendation. As you know from all of your work, that continues to be a moving target. I think I hear Commissioner Edwards saying, can we spend more? I think I hear Commissioner Menser saying, can we even spend as much as we've sort of modeled out in the advisory committee recommendation? I feel, so the advisory committee recommendation totals like 8.2 million and change. I think that's pretty aggressive. And I think in terms of spending, I personally wouldn't feel comfortable spending more than that. But I do think we have capacity. When you go down to these kind of lower lines at the bottom where we've modeled out, okay, we get down to 1.2 million at the end of 2022. It's sort of how many things can you kind of bake into the financial plan, but I think that's probably worst case scenario because I think our revenue will probably be a little better than that. And this modeled in underspending for the current year, but it doesn't model in that we will have some underspending next year and the next year. So I think that 8.2 million is aggressive, but safe.
Well, let me try to see. So cash flow needs, according to this sheet, says 2.2 million. The sheet that you put in the binder, the summary sheet, says recommended level of expenditures to spend fund balance to 3 months by the end of 2022. So, but the financial plan shows that we're getting there at the end of 2021, and the end of 2022 is 196,000. So I'm not.
So no, that's if you fund. So that's if you fund everything the offices and departments want. So if you go up and fund $9.157 million, then yes, you get there. That's what I don't think there's capacity for, which is, and if there was, then we wouldn't have needed a whole advisory committee process. You would just be say yes to everything and we're all good. I don't think there's capacity for that.
Okay.
The advisory committee recommendation is to spend about $1 million less than that.
And that's what stretches us to the next year. I got you. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's on the aggressive
That was
side of what.
exactly. Go ahead, Ty.
No, I'm good. That's why you're saying that even that's a touch aggressive, but potentially defensible. But it's because it's getting us another year's worth of cash flow, and then we can see how revenue comes in, et cetera.
Right.
Thank you. That was exactly my question, was the cash flow for 3 months. All right. Thank you. Carry on then, Carrie.
Well, I don't have a lot more to say about the financial plan. So basically, that the recommendation from the committee totals about $8.2 million. And again, I think I think the takeaway from the financial plan is, or the question to the board from the financial plan is, do you like that number? Do you feel that is what I would call aggressive, but safely aggressive? Or like because everything follows from that. If, as we go through programmatic recommendations, if you're like, well, actually, I think we can really afford to spend more, that's one conversation. If it's, that looks a little aggressive, that's a different conversation. So if you like that number, then let's move on.
You need that now, Robin?
So, Carrie also brought the ranking tool that the committee used, so you can take another look at that. But the where we're going after this is I've got the ranked TST proposals to hand out, the policy level proposals, and we'll walk through those, and I'll be asking you thumbs up or thumbs down on them.
Okay. All right.
Hutch, I have a question.
Go ahead.
I guess, I know we're all trying to do good here with the money that we have available, but when Robin's asking for a thumbs up or a thumbs down, I don't know how it fits in the scheme of things with everything else. And I know at least one of the conversations that I was interested in having is how much good can we get out of this money and alleviate jail overcrowding and help citizens get back on their feet. And taking into consideration, I'm not crazy about a jail expansion. I don't even know where we're at on the jail expansion, but that was a big piece of it earlier in the year that we had talked about. And I'm wondering, so I've got, no problems with funding. Like I see we're doing case management over at the Nisqually Jail. And that's good if we're getting a good return for the investment that we're putting in there. Do we have any comparison so that we know that we're spending that money and we're getting a successful return, or are we just putting money in a program and we don't even know if we're getting any benefit or not? Or would that money be better spent in our own county jail? And could we revise some of the programming we're doing there to get a better bang for our buck? So I'm just kind of curious, as we make these decisions now, are they premature, I guess, or can we adjust them later? So
How much later are you talking about?
I don't know. I mean, we're talking about jail construction at some point, and I think this goes part and parcel. Just using that as an example, what do we need to do with our jail, and can we do something besides jail construction? Can we do preventive maintenance with society and come out with a better end result and have successful citizens end up becoming part of the solution instead of always being the problem? I don't know. I wonder where we're at on all that.
So I can tell you where we're at on jail expansion. It is on pause as the board directed. And we are currently awaiting guidance before we go any farther with that. So it's on hold. If you're talking about I'm trying to understand your question about when you ask, will we be able to change our minds later? Are you talking about during this budget process? Later as in next week? Or
Well-
are you talking as in later next year?
I don't have the answer to that. I don't even know if I'm going to be here later next year or not, but I think it's a discussion worth having. And if we're locked in here, I mean, I'm looking at, case management line items and all the different things that are very positive things to do. Are we getting the best bang for our buck? Do we know that when we spend money on X line item here, that the end result is a success? Or, gee, this one never seems to give us anything. Oh, we'll try it one more time, or, well, it's halfway good. I'm just looking for efficiencies everywhere that I can, and I'm thinking ahead about a jail expansion that I don't want, so.
Right.
Well,
So-
the jail expansion's on pause indefinitely. It could be a year, it could be 2 years. But the
Well,
budget,
I don't
the
know
budget
if
can't
that's
be on
true or
pause.
not, but we'll
But
see.
that's not coming up in the next 2 months, and we got to finish the budget.
The board. Let me address the timeline, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Carrie to address your questions about are these programs effective? On the timeline, you need to make budget decisions about the entire budget, not just the general fund budget, no later than next Friday. And so every day over the next 2 weeks, or a week and a half, I'll be asking, okay, now we're going to look at, tomorrow morning, we're going to look at capital projects, thumbs up, thumbs down. And those decisions are the ones that will be built into the preliminary budget that is published for the public and reviewed at the public hearing. You will have one more chance to make changes after next Friday, and that will be after the public hearing. We have 2 days reserved for the board to go through and make adjustments, but then it will be time to adopt the final budget. Can you make changes to that budget next year? The board can indeed make budget changes at any point in time, as you saw this year. You can give a different direction. But these programs are, they'll be staffed up if they require staffing. There's contracts with community providers. So if changes are desired, we would recommend to you that those either be made very early in the year or wait until the following year's budget.
That's fine. Just as long as we know, I'm good with that. Thank you.
Right. So I'm just trying to lay this out on a timeline. So with that, I'm going to ask Carrie to, I think a lot of the answers are in your report.
I think you hit on a few different issues, all very big and very good questions. So what do we get, do we know that we get anything out of these programs? So, walking through that annual report as we started was sort of a very high level look at that question. We serve X number of people. This is who they are. This is who each program serves. And then again, I didn't walk through all the performance measures for every program. But for every program, we do have performance measures. I think we believe we are getting bang for our buck. Different programs have different goals. So the type of bang you're getting for your buck is different. We also have I think we answer that question in a couple of different ways. One is the performance measures. Are programs, serving a certain number of people? Are those people, are they achieving whatever the appropriate goal for that program is? Graduating from the court, or connecting to treatment, or doing a certain number of assessments, or whatever. That's one answer. Another answer is, because we couldn't possibly do an in-depth program evaluation on every single, a real impact analysis on every single program we fund, we rely on evidence-based programming that some other researcher somewhere else has said, hey, this program provides bang for the buck. We are not a university that can, impact evaluations of these types of programs take years and are millions of dollars. So we sort of say, hey, somebody else researched it over and over and over and replicated it and said, this is a cost beneficial program. So we sort of rely on that. So that's kind of the lens through which we do all of this work. And then, so I guess that's kind of a global answer. Another, in terms of your question about kind of linking it to jail expansion or keeping people out of jail, as we walk through the programs, I'd be happy to say, hey, to highlight the programs that we believe have that impact. I do think the advisory committee shares that goal, and some of the prioritized new investments share that goal. So for example, pretrial services came forward with a request to fund not just diversion, but pre-charge diversion. That should keep people out of jail. The advisory committee looked very favorably on that request. So, but there are multiple goals of TST. I think, going into next budget cycle, I know one of the things the committee would like to do is meet with the board in the new year and say, hey, what are our priorities right now, really? If that's the board's number one goal is let's divert people from jail, then that would be, some guidance for that next round. But that is definitely something that that does happen to be a goal that that really resonated with the committee, was part of the discussion. So that pre-charge diversion, law enforcement assisted diversion should also have that impact. This recommendation does include match for that, assuming that goes forward. That answer. I see waving hands and yeah.
We're going to go through item by item then.
We are going to go item by item through the list. And I would also say, before I give the floor to Commissioner Menser, that you don't have to fund any of these things. It is up to the Board of County Commissioners. You get to decide which of these things gets funded at the end of the day. And I think, Carrie asked the question, is this too much? Do you think we've spent too much? Is this spend down of fund balance too aggressive? You may decide as a board that you'd like to squirrel a little money away, earmarked for jail population reduction proposals that you would consider early next year. That's an option for you too.
Okay, Ty, I didn't see your hand. I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention to you.
Oh no, Robin kind of tied some strings together. I understand what Commissioner Edwards is asking, and I understand, but I also understand the budget process being where we are. I don't think we have the capacity, and that's the whole point of having the community, the community advisory committee is to, and it seems like we could, for the next cycle, we can sort of, I would imagine, just like we did with conservation futures and salmon recovery prioritization, we could say, hey, we want a scoring bump. Commissioners want a scoring bump for programs or we want to prioritize programs that are going to take folks out of the jail and do something else with them productive. And that's a conversation I'd love to have. I don't think we can really do that now because as you say, we've got 10 days to make a lot of decisions, and we've got some great, and I feel like the Citizen Advisory Committee just nailed a lot of things and they made good recommendations. But just as an example of Commissioner Edwards' point, I wanted to bring up, just looking at this report. I mean, if I were to just look at this, DUI court does not seem to be doing very well. I mean, if 17% are graduating and recidivism is 38% in a 12-month period, I wouldn't expect anyone to commit another DUI or any other crime in 12 months at 38%. I mean, so that would seem to me like that's a program based on the data that's in front of me that's an abject failure. I don't know how much we're spending on that program, but that's the kind of stuff that I would expect the advisory committee to sort of look at and stuff and kind of make recommendations to us and say this isn't working or it needs to be tweaked somehow. But anyway, I mean, we can't really do that at this point, but it's sort of laying the foundation for maybe future conversations we can have.
I would also, before I let Carrie jump in response to that, as a data nerd, I would recommend that instead of looking at a number and reacting to a number, you've got to put that in context. And so if we were to benchmark against other DUI courts, and there are many now across the nation, the question is, how are we doing compared to other courts? Are we doing great? That might be an amazing recidivism rate if other courts are seeing 70%. And I don't know what that is. I'm just saying we really need to benchmark our data.
Well, I have the data of a lot of over a decade as a public defender, and I can just tell you with some pretty good authority that is not a good, those are not good statistics that I would want to see in that program. But anyway, yeah, you're right in general.
It's important to benchmark.
Well, before I forget, I want to be sure to thank Marcia for going through the financial plan with us. Thank you. All right, go ahead, Carrie. Here we go. And just be mindful of the time. It's 2:45. We have what, about an hour and a half? And I don't know how much more we've got.
Did we end at 4 o'clock or 4:30? I think I scheduled
4:30.
That's why we're sure we have sufficient time.
Okay, do we want to walk through this one now? Is that what we're doing? Like a line by line?
I think we can do that, but before you do, if you could stop sharing your screen for just a moment, I'd like to share mine. And leave this page, please. I'm going to, here we go. Here's the one that I want. So the board also has this treatment sales tax ranked list. And what this is in the order based on the board's initial reaction, and those, your scores can always change. But for example, the first line on the list is the Superior Court request for Safe Babies Court. All three commissioners ranked this high. And so it's the first item on your list. And then the second item on the list is the Heart Strides. So you have this list in ranked order. We can either go through this ranked order list, or we can use Carrie's ranking tool.
Well, just to look at treatment sales tax, I did not rate that, or for the Safe Babies, I rated that medium, not high.
That was medium on the TST list. It was high on the second list.
But that was before, and I had low because that was the first ranking was before we had the presentation from the advisory committee.
Yeah.
So then we did them.
So you see both rankings on this sheet.
And
So
what
I'm not
are you looking at?
suggesting that has to be number one, and your scores can change, and it's still up to you whether or not you want to fund it. So
I guess I'd like to ask something, Hutch.
Go right ahead.
As we go through this, I mean, we've got the advisory committee recommendation here in front of us, and we trust them to allocate this money out. I don't know that I need to yes, I know we've prioritized certain things, but I don't know as I need to go over that line item by line item and second guess everything they've made recommendations for. I'm kind of inclined to go with their recommendations. I know I have a few little things I question here or there, but I probably don't know enough about it, is probably why I have those questions. So I just wonder if our time is being used, you know, as wisely as it could be, if we're second guessing a committee of, you know, professional folks that are giving us an honest opinion. That's all.
And my question is, which sheet are we going through? I don't have one with just a couple items on it. I've got the one that I ranked, and it appears to be a duplicate.
It's this one. I think it's printed on bigger paper and it has the first 3 items on the first page.
And you have 3 columns labeled as ratings.
Uh-huh.
So, and that's what.
Oh, I see what you did. I see what you did. Okay.
No name as to who belongs to whom on those ratings, but it gives you an overall. And that gives you, as Robin stated, some of you rank high on that item when you view the TST, but when you rank the same item in a different way, it was a medium, for instance.
Okay.
Okay.
So this rating, it says unanimously, it was high.
On the second.
On the second rating. So this is based on the second rating.
So I'm happy to walk through either this list or the recommendation tool that TST has given you. But I think Commissioner Edwards has a proposal on the table.
Yep.
Can I respond to that proposal?
Yeah, please.
I agree because I'm looking through my notes and I pretty much support with really just one exception that I can find, I support the advisory committee's recommendations. So in this instance, it might be more efficient to not have to go line by line, depending on where the other commissioners are. The only one I'll just throw out here, the only one I see where I questioned it was they had asked for partial funding, 1.5 for the pretrial services expansion to diversion precharge. And I was just hoping we could find a way to fund both, maybe because the board, you know, maybe if I got outvoted on some other funding request and there was more money, or we revised the financial numbers, which it sounds like we did a little bit. Other than that, I was pretty much wholesale in agreement with the advisory committee recommendations, and I stick by that. So if that makes it easier to just look at things where we might have a comment or a question or a disagreement, I'm fine with that approach.
Let me weigh in on this. I give complete deference to the advisory committee because of the work they do, having experienced it. And so I am absolutely content with saving everybody's time. They've chewed through all this data. They've questioned the program managers. They've received the information they needed and made wise decisions. And I'm A-okay accepting the recommendation. If there's somehow we can accommodate your request, Commissioner Menser, I'm happy with doing that too.
Let me weigh in on this too, because it sounds like we're headed in the same direction. I also would be interested in seeing if we could accommodate Commissioner Menser's concern on that particular issue. And I could say, well, you know, we've got the $8 million total here, or whatever we're up against, and let the TST folks know that, hey, figure it out, will you? Fund the rest of that out of this. So you might have to cut 2% from something down the ways and 3% here until they come up with the amount to make it work as recommended.
My pitch was just so it's clear. I felt like this was spending money to save money, because we heard, and it might have been, I think I clarified, might have been after the committee made its recommendations. We heard that there's like a 500 to 800 felony caseload backlog that's been building up through the coronavirus pandemic time. And so I'm really concerned about that and the ripple effect that'll have on our justice system and the expenditures. And we're all concerned about trying to make people accountable, not, you know, but in a way that is efficient. And so that's why I really focused on this. And I thought that only reason I was even really going to question the advisory committee on this is because the date, like when we got your recommendations, which you had done like the month before, and then we got like hot off the press data from like that week that the felony backlog was even worse than probably you guys even knew. So I was thinking that you might even change your mind if you knew about what we knew about that backlog to fund those 2 pretrial diversion officers. That was my thinking on that.
Okay. So Robin or Carrie, you want to weigh in on that? You've heard from the commissioners of the board what we'd like to do.
So it seems like I hear broad support across you. So the question is, do you increase what you're going to spend and just spend a little more fund balance, or do you want me to try to have a sidebar with the committee in the next week to say, okay, if we're adding whatever it is, a half FTE, roughly $50,000 there, where would we take another 50? Where would they recommend taking another 50 away? So, and I guess maybe I defer to, well, I of course defer to all of you, but Robin, do you want to weigh in based on like what you've seen of the financial plan?
So I was just taking a quick look at the revenue to date and where it might go for the rest of the year. And I think the 2021 is going to be higher than what is on this plan. I think 2020 is probably pretty close. It's not going to be much higher than the 6.4 million. I think you could afford a little more. How much is the difference on the pretrial item?
I think it's like 48,000.
50,000.
$50,000.
to 216.
I'm sorry, Commissioner.
It's basically $48,000 additional from what was recommended by the advisory committee.
I think you could afford another $50,000. There is one other issue that I'm trying to get a little clarity on here. Denise has her hand up. Thank you. She's helping me.
Saw that.
Sorry, I wasn't quick enough to get back to you. So there is one issue to be aware of that has a general fund impact or a potential general fund impact, and that is in change request B-40-35. 34, and it affects the maintenance level for the TST corrections coordinator. And Heidi Thompson had brought up the issue that if the funding was reduced for that position, then there'd be an unfunded portion of this. It's a full position, so then it would leave that unfunded and potentially require a general fund to backstop that. And I did build in the general fund portion in the change request, in that change request.
And so this, just for context, as the committee did its work, there was, I think Commissioner Menser called it an effort to wring out all the underspending to try to get it to add up to something. So there's a bunch of small adjustments to maintenance level. Hey, there's, $30,000 in underspending here and $15,000 here and $20,000 there, trying to add that up to fund something else. Most of those really just affect professional services that are really not encumbered in current contracts, et cetera. But this one affects an FTE. It really, in my opinion, doesn't change what would actually be spent, but I understand that you need to budget for the full FTE.
So if the board is comfortable authorizing that general fund that goes along to fully fund that position rather than fully funding it with TST funds, then I think we're good to go.
How much is that?
How much money?
I think it's 38, I think.
Denise got her hand up.
Yeah, I've got it right in front of me. It's 33,592.
So you're agreeing on funding the $38,000 out of the general fund?
I am.
Can I get more clarification on this issue? So this is, I just want to understand, it's a corrections officer that works with bills treatment sales tax for part of their salary because they're working with folks who are on some kind of
Yes.
treatment.
It's a lieutenant who coordinates all the TST funded services in the jail. So the chemical dependency program and these reentry programs, et cetera, coordinates all of that, does the contracts, does the data, also does the, identification of inmates who need to be in a certain group in a certain place at a certain time. She is fully budgeted to TST, but she tracks her time and codes exceptions to get charged to the general fund. So historically, and I am clearly not speaking on behalf of the sheriff's office, but historically it's, been maybe 15 to 20% of that lieutenant's time that is not spent on TST. So it gets charged to the general fund anyway.
So
this would just be shifting the budget over there.
Okay.
So
Go ahead, Romero.
Romero.
I guess that's exactly what the conclusions I want to get. Thank you, Carrie, because it's about the eligible activities in which the TST covers portions of the FTE at the corrections, the lieutenant in this case. But in reality, the general fund is already backfilling those activities that are not eligible under TST. So I'm just wondering as to why an additional general fund allocation needs to be put in place to cover that.
I would agree with that. It sounds like they're already absorbing the additional cost.
Yeah, it's already covered. Yeah.
No.
It's not like the TST is reducing the allocation. It's just the TST is reducing the eligible where it's already been put in place. So
it sounds like we don't have a problem at this point.
What was that, Ty?
It sounds like we don't have a problem then at this point.
No. Where did Commissioner Edwards? He's out of the room now?
Yeah, he had to leave. Sorry. Well, he told me he had to leave. I don't need to apologize for that.
So is he coming back?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm giving you a thumbs up on that then.
So
well, that's
thumbs
part
up on TST and thumbs up to the sheriff absorbing the general fund portion of that FTE that the TST is being reduced on.
As he currently is.
As he currently is.
Yeah.
Apparently.
All right.
Then we're agreeing to basically fund those two positions out of TST, otherwise accepting the recommendations of the advisory committee in totality.
I just said you won't be back.
Oh.
Thank you, advisory committee.
Well, I like to keep you guys surprised.
Okay.
Gosh, that was good.
Yep. And we're done with TST.
Oh, is he leaving now? Commissioner Edwards is gone?
Yeah, he's leaving now.
Okay.
You need to vote on something?
No, I think it was following up the conversation and approving the advisory committee recommendation.
Oh, yeah, well, I'm there.
Okay. So moving on.
Yes. So let's take.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank
Gary.
you all. Appreciate it.
Thanks, advisory committee, for showing up. Appreciate it. And for your work.
So Hutch, let's take 10 minutes and then we'll move to the next thing, which will be a review of Amendment 3 for one-time items.
Got it. Okay, 10 minutes. We'll be back at 3:10. Thank you very much. We're in recess. Well, thank you.
do is walk through Budget Amendment 3 and identify anything that should have been tagged as one time from the point of view of the board. And then we will go in to the system and make the changes that will free up some money in 2021.
Oh, these are two-sided.
Yep,
Oh.
this is how you do it. So you have this worksheet in front of you, and I am working to bring it up on the screen. And we're just going to walk through it. Some of it we won't need to spend any time on at all because it's already one time or kind of takes care of itself, but other items will be open for discussion. So the first line item.
Hey, Robin, can you zoom? Just make sure the public has the opportunity to read. Oh, there you go. A little better.
Kind of cuts off the narrative a bit. All right, so that's about as good as it's going to get. So item number 1, the state examiner, also known as the Washington State auditor, comes in and audits our budgets and finances every year. And they increase their costs, so we had to add to the audit budget, and that is an ongoing cost.
Yep. As we go along, you want thumbs up or down, or are you going to keep on?
Thumbs up or down.
Okay. Well, we have no choice on that one.
Yeah,
Right.
just give us your, I mean, I'm going to rely heavily, Robin, on your characterization of these. I have no agenda here. I'm just trying to capture the ones that were presented as one-off, one-time expenditures, and just making sure that we dot our I's and cross our T's. So just kind of let us know, and then we can pipe up or thumb up and thumb down with you.
Great.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you. And I do very much appreciate going through this. So that's ongoing. The item number 2 is a grant, and it has already been adjusted in maintenance levels. So that one's taken care of. Item number 3, also a grant, a one-time grant, and it came out in maintenance level. And I'm going to let Denise and Olivia and Patty will stop me if I'm wrong. Line item number 4 is the elections grant for COVID. That is intended to be one time. There may be some carryover based on other funding that the auditor has received, but we'll address that in an amendment. So this one is taken care of. That was number 4. Item number 5 is the election security grant. Same thing. You do not need to address it. Item number 7 is reduced revenue in Superior Court. This item is ongoing, and it should be ongoing because they are not taking in the money that had been projected once upon a time. So that is an ongoing cost or ongoing revenue reduction. Yeah, we can't just add the revenue back in as much as we'd love to. Line item number 8 is a decrease in the Superior Court treatment sales tax allocation. It is an increase in TST and a decrease in general fund. That accounts for cost allocation within the office, and that is an ongoing thing.
Yeah,
Line number 9 is attached to that. Line 10 is also a treatment sales tax fix. That's 10 and 11. That's ongoing. is going to go fast.
That is. Those are grants too again.
Yep. Line number 12 was a grant that is addressed in maintenance level. And line number 14 then is where we're at on page 2. That was adjusting revenue. That will also be adjusted if necessary in maintenance level. So that one's taken care of. Line number 15 is a copier lease expenditure reduction. That is a technical change that is already addressed. Line number 16 is an allocation to address the orgs. And it's just long enough that I don't remember what this is. It's technical though, and I'm assuming it's ongoing. Am I seeing a nod from, yes, okay, good.
I'm way ahead of you, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, woohoo. Line number 17 is extra pay for union increases for the prosecuting attorney's office. This cost is ongoing. It's in alignment with the union agreement. The costs are not going to go back down. So I would assume that this would be an ongoing cost.
Okay.
Yep, 2 thumbs up. Excellent. Line number 18, also the prosecutor. It is a grant program, so it would be addressed in maintenance level, whether or not it's going to continue. Line number 19 and 20 is an adjustment between for the allocation for TST in the prosecutor's office. That is also an ongoing item. Line number 21
Grant.
is a grant, a decrease in grant costs and the associated revenue adjustment. So that goes on into the future. Line number 21 is a revenue adjustment. The prosecuting attorney's office was receiving less revenue than had been originally anticipated from the BHA. So that will continue into the future, although they should adjust revenue if that should change. That's a future thing. Line 23 is for the prosecutor. They added a State Farm donation carry forward. This is, I think, a one-time award that they received in 2019, right at the end of the year, and will spend in 2020. Somehow the revenue was already booked. But it was a grant, so I would say that this $1,723 should be one time.
Yeah.
Is that? Yeah, Denise, help me here.
Well, I was just going to say, and it should have been taken care of because it's a grant, should have been taken care of in maintenance level.
Okay, so we'll double check and make sure that 23 came out in maintenance. And we're on 24. There's additional revenue coming in from the Tumwater Rainier Prosecution Services, and that would be ongoing. Line 25 is the new donation from State Farm. So if that needed to be adjusted, it was done so in maintenance level. Line 26, we get to the sheriff law enforcement. So the sheriff requested funding for workers' compensation. It is not included. It was not included in the budget at the increased level of workers' comp. And the sheriff's office has clearly noted that this is an ongoing request and needs to continue in the future. So this one would continue. And then line 27 is the same item, just in the other fund that pays for sheriff staff. Line number 28 is a cleaning allowance shortfall. This was also, the budget had been built with the cleaning allowance at $600 instead of $900, needed to be the higher amount. So this also is clearly tagged as an ongoing cost in future years.
That's also a contract issue.
Yep, per the contract, we have to pay $900 per employee. Line 30 is funding for the Nisqually grant. And since this was a grant, this is a grant that we received in 2019. They asked to spend it in 2020. And since it was a grant, it should have come out in maintenance level. And we'll just double check and make sure that it did. That was line 30. Line 32 is also a grant that should have been adjusted in maintenance level. And line 33 then is funding for the purchase of tasers.
You missed 31, I think.
I'm so sorry.
Marshal's office.
Funding for the U.S. Marshals. This also appears to be, this is a contract for reimbursement. So if it's ongoing, the revenue would be ongoing to support it, or it would have been adjusted out in maintenance level. So 31 is something that we'll double check, but either way, it does not affect fund balance. So line 33 is where we get to the something that is potentially a one-time item, and that's the funding for tasers.
In the grant, number 32, that's no big, that's a grant.
Right, that's grant.
Okay. 33.
33 is tasers.
One of their big requests for this year is to add certain equipment to ER&R, and I think tasers is one of those things. So we would basically be addressing it there. It shouldn't be this particular amount shouldn't be in the budget for next year, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. That's how I'm.
No, that would be accurate.
Denise?
Oh, I was just going to say that I had talked about that with Heidi Thompson, and my recollection is it was a while ago when we had this conversation, but my recollection was we could reduce this because if they funded the other.
So is this going to be added to R&R or ER&R? Because we talked about that.
That is a proposal. Okay. To add the tasers to ER&R.
So this right here for number 33, that's a thumbs up, or Dan, you want thumbs up? I mean, we're doing the purchase.
So this would be a one-time item.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, otherwise, we're telling them to buy a new set of tasers every year, and that's not my understanding of how long they last.
Right. Line 34 is a grant, so that would have been taken care of in maintenance level. Line 35 is funding for overtime. So the
Robin?
yes,
So the first line says it for expected overtime and associated benefits shortfall.
right.
Okay, I get it. Never mind. I want to answer my own question.
Pay salary, so there's,
Yep.
taxes and stuff that go.
First, I saw budget shortfall at first, but I read benefits. Okay.
Right. So this is something that you have heard often from the sheriff. He has said that his budget is not adequately funded for the amount of overtime that they have to pay. And so what this request was or is the ability to pay overtime and to bring the budget up enough to continue to cover overtime. And I'm relatively certain that the sheriff would say that this is anticipated to be an ongoing expense. However, when this item was considered, one of the things that you did not take into consideration that has been taken into consideration in the past is the reason for a lot of the overtime has been that positions are not filled and they have vacancy savings. And quite often the vacancy savings have been sufficient to cover the overtime costs. And as you saw earlier today, the sheriff anticipates reverting funding to the general fund at the end of this year. Now, is that because of vacancy savings? I have not taken the time to take a look at that, but the overtime is intended by the sheriff to be an ongoing addition to his budget.
Yeah, do you remember how much the reversion was expected to be?
A little bit over 500,000 for the end of 2020.
Okay. And so even though the vacancies may have covered a portion of that, I can see since 2015, 246,000 requested now is considerably less. But some of that overtime is also not only for major cases, I would think, for detectives being called out for homicides or shootings, or moving homeless and such. He doesn't charge overtime, I don't believe, for mutual aid, helping the city out. So it's a question, I'm asking, this is a question of, yes, an expenditure one time, or whether we consider it ongoing?
Yeah, that is the question.
Because I know he'll consider it ongoing, and it will be ongoing because of funding and staffing. Okay. Ty?
Well, I mean, I understand that it's ongoing. That's why he lays this out, that his budget has been 186,000 and he's had these expenditures. So he's explaining why he needs that that additional money. But that's, to me, our vote on that was not the mechanism by which to solve that problem. That's why he's asking for more deputies and more corrections officers, and we're going to consider those requests in the budget. I did not think when we said, yeah, you're right, you've got this overtime, we're going to pay it in a budget amendment, that we were making that. I mean, obviously this has happened in 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19, and at no point did the board adjust. I mean, the sheriff's explained this to me a few times, that he's always had these overtime requests, and he's never gotten the overtime budget to cover it. So one way or the other, we have to address it. And I get that, but
yeah,
I don't think that this is the right mechanism that we would be doing it in. I mean, unless we discussed it and decided, let's do that. But that's not the discussion I remember when we just considered this. The discussion I remember was, are we going to pay this? So I don't know. I mean, to me, this is one time. I'm surprised to hear that this was not treated as one time. And I know that's why we've got the request that we have from the sheriffs. I mean, if we just backed up and said, okay, here's another $250,000 for you to spend on that, then that would go into staffing and 2021 budget requests, et cetera. But that was not my understanding.
So I give a thumbs up to the $246,400 for funding for overtime. But I'm not going to marry a future board to this ongoing expense. It's going to be there. We know it's going to be there. It's not a shock or a surprise. It's just the amount is the unknown. But I'll leave that for a future board. So I'm saying yes to the funding for overtime this year, but not for the ongoing request.
So line 35 will be a one-time item that we will take out of 21 and future years.
Okay.
Okay.
There is a budget. I mean, am I correct? I'm remembering this. I'm looking at the page and I'm also remembering conversations I had with the sheriff that this number of 186,858, that is an ongoing, right? That's been ongoing, if I understood him correctly. There is an ongoing piece of overtime in his budget. It's just not adequate to cover his needs. So I want to make it clear that I don't want him to not get what he's had before.
So he would continue to have what was in the base budget for overtime. The sheriff has an overtime budget. It's just that that particular line item, specifically overtime, they exceed that every year, the amount that's set aside. But what they don't talk about here is how much they underspend in their other salary items.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, I'm not that concerned about that. To me, that's a different issue. The issue is how we treat these budget amendments in terms of whether they carry forward or they don't.
Right. So the 186 would remain. It was in the budget before. It would remain in the budget in the future.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
So 35 is done.
Right.
Yeah.
Just to confirm, 35 is a one-time, right?
Yes, for one time.
Okay, thank you.
Item number 36 is for the sheriff. This was funding for equipment and training for 3 deputies that had been funded. When the board funded these positions, they did not add money for equipment and training.
Is that when we funded that and that request came through, is that on the board that we didn't figure that out, or is that not in the request included?
I'm sorry, say that again.
And I'm not pointing a finger, but when I hear it's because the board didn't, then I feel, oh, why didn't we do that? Or was it not part of the request as it came in when we funded the positions, but not the equipment and the training?
So I'm not sure, Commissioner. These positions.
I'm not going to say yes to it anyway, because it's peanuts and we've got to give them training and equipment. But I'm just wondering where the gap came in. We just said, yeah, fund it, but we didn't fully fund it, or was it?
So it's when we built the biennium budget in 2019, and I do apologize, that was a long time ago, and I'm not remembering the details on these 3 particular FTEs. It seems like the board chose to add FTEs, and at the time, we just quickly put an amount in the budget. There have been times when we've had an agreement with the sheriff that we would add funding for staff costs, and the sheriff would absorb the ancillary costs. We'd pay the salaries and benefits and they'd have to come up with the rest, but I don't know if that's these FTEs.
Okay,
This
That's
one,
fine.
this one was made as an ongoing request, so I'm fine with this being ongoing. Because the training happens every year. It's right, it's described right in the item.
yeah.
As
So,
long as it was clear. I'm fine with it.
commissioners, just to, there is a line item on the 2021 request from the sheriff. Let me point that out on your budget book. That will be tab 21. On the second page, she is asking 47,000 for training.
That's for all, that's not just for these three, is it? Positions.
That's for all of them. So, but if you want to make this an ongoing, you need to take into consideration the request they have for 2021. That I want to make. I just want to make sure that you connect the dots.
Oh,
Okay.
Okay, so line 36 is an ongoing, it's going to be tagged as ongoing.
for those
Making
positions,
sure I
yeah.
heard that right.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah, that's how it was made. I'm not trying to redo anything here. I just want to I'm just trying to clarify what I think we already did.
right,
And this was ongoing. It's right there in the request.
true.
So we made that decision at the time we made it.
Okay, line 37 is funding for the purchase of red dot sights on pistols.
I remember that, and I'm okay with that, but it looks like it's gonna be, he's requesting ongoing. Would this be part of the ER&R then too down the road?
I imagine it would. I don't know if this is specifically one of the items that they've negotiated with Bruce. I'd have to look at the list.
Because they don't need to be replaced every year, unless they're doing it on a 3-year.
But they are phasing in with
Phasing
only
in.
a certain number purchased in each year.
Yeah, this is.
That would be an
This is-
ongoing,
So it is on, yeah.
yep, an ongoing cost
Ongoing for 3 years anyway.
for 3 years.
Yeah, I'm okay with that, you bet.
Okay, 3 years. Then line 38 is purchasing the Bearcat. And that was out of the interlocal drug enforcement fund. But that would be a one-time cost.
Yeah.
Then there is, the next item is line 40. That's for copier leases. That's a technical item that we address in maintenance level. Line 41 is also the sheriff law enforcement. This is an equipment exchange with Lewis County. That should be a one-time item because the vehicle swap.
Why does it say on the bottom of this, this is an ongoing request? Why would that be?
Yeah.
Is that maybe that's just a typo from a previous item or something?
It is possible, expected to be a boat and trailer,
Because I don't.
Freightliner. So it is possible that this could be considered ongoing because of the increase in ER&R contribution to eventually replace the new vehicle, or the potential for increased M&O costs for the new vehicle. we'd have to kind of pull it apart and see what it is.
It's not much money, but it's just, I guess I have that question.
So it's a Bearcat and a trailer.
Yes, it is.
It is boat and trailer, but we already got the truck. Dive van. Yeah, so I obviously I'm gonna say yes, but is it one time?
Well, the sheriff's office said that it's an ongoing request.
I'm wondering
I'm
if they want to bring that into the ERNR.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, very possible.
Yeah.
In which case I should have seen revenue in the ER&R fund.
Right.
But,
I think that's what probably they meant with an ongoing.
Yep, I would suppose. I don't want to.
we can take this apart and see what it was, but it is a small amount.
Okay.
So the next item is line 42, and this is funding for leave buyouts. And this is the one that I was talking about earlier today. They had identified 7 specific employees and given us the amount for each one. Leave buyouts happen every year, but the policy of the county has been for all offices and departments to absorb the buyout of staff who depart. So it, you know,
I've got 2 questions which kind of give you a pause, Robin. And that is the several times over the last 4 years I've spoken with the sheriff's office about this. I've been told that the policy used to be at the county that the county paid for it. And I asked you numerous times and you said no. The county doesn't pay for that, or it doesn't come out of HR or any or other funds. It comes out of each department or office absorbs it.
right.
And so if that's the case, and he's asking for 238,000, it doesn't say one-time expense or ongoing, but you know there's going to be ongoing buyouts.
There are buyouts every year in most offices and departments. Yeah. Not all of them, but almost every office and department has to manage buyout costs every year. And what the county used to do was there was money in non-departmental for extraordinary sick leave costs at the time of retirement. And the Washington State Department of Retirement Systems would send us a letter and tell us how much we had to cover in these extraordinary sick leave buyouts. And the county had no choice. So there had been money in the non-departmental, and that's what we covered. But the normal sick leave buyout and the annual leave buyouts have always been paid by all offices and departments.
And do we give every office and department the funding with which to do that, knowing it's going to vary from 1 to 5 to 7 to 3 or a year? Are they funded to cover that?
No, the policy of the county has been for offices and departments to absorb those costs.
And for how long has that been the county policy? Do you ballpark?
Oh, that's been, so I've been with the county for 10 years. It's been a minimum of 10 years, and it was that way for years before I got here.
And is the sheriff the only one that comes in and asks for money for a buyout?
No, we hear from other offices and departments.
And what has we done? Paid them?
No, we've told them all that they had to absorb.
So this year.
So this is where earlier I was saying this needs to be a policy conversation.
Boy, it sure does.
Right. That's my point. I mean, if the sheriff can come in and say, I've got an average of $238,000 worth of buyouts every year. I want this added into my budget, then we can consider that and grant it. But this was a budget amendment to say, hey, I had these 7 people. Can you guys cover this? We voted to do it for whatever reason. I did not even contemplate that this was a request. It doesn't, he's been very clear about saying it's an ongoing request. Where it is an ongoing request, I just don't believe that was even the request, was to say, start giving me $238,344 per year for leave buyouts that I may incur in the future. That was not the request. The request was, I've got 7 employees retiring this year, and I've got this many hours to cash in, and I've got a collective bargaining agreement that's going to increase my overtime. Can you please cover this in a budget amendment? We said yes. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't see how this can be characterized as an ongoing request.
And I don't think it, I'm saying he didn't ask for it to be ongoing, I don't believe. I'm just saying it's ongoing because it happens every year. So it's an ongoing expense at whatever level. But I'm gonna say yes, but this is really a huge policy decision that needs to be made, or needs to have happen. If it's an issue, especially with county-wide, with other offices and departments.
So you're going to say yes to what?
Why? For the funding for the leave buyout for this one time.
That it's one time. Okay.
But what does tie? What do you tie the same?
I hear.
Well, I mean,
Well, you already funded one time.
we already voted. I voted.
You already
against
voted
this.
for this.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, we're just
So
identifying whether or not it's one time.
one time.
I agree that it should be.
Okay.
And Chief Thompson, thank you for all your efforts and work on this too. I know she's probably watching or listening.
I'm sure she is.
Yeah. So thank you, Heidi.
So the next item is line 43. It is a grant, so that's taken care of, the same as 44. Line 45 is the workers' compensation shortfall, now in corrections, identified as ongoing. Line 48 is the copy lease technical. We can take care of that. Line 49 is for contract increases, clearly identified as ongoing. Line 52 is a grant. Line 53 is funding for the tasers in corrections. So we would treat that the same as we did in the law enforcement side.
And that's moving to ER&R
Yep,
as well.
So this expenditure is one time.
yep.
Okay.
54 is a TST adjustment. So that would be ongoing. That's 54 and 55. 56 is for the coroner. The coroner had a grant that would be adjusted in maintenance level. Line 57 is non-departmental. It is an increase in funding for the code compliance.
Mm-hmm.
And that is needed to be ongoing to bring their funding up to the appropriate level future years. And line 58 is just the revenue coming from the general fund. Line 59 is in public defense. That's an adjustment to TST. That's 59 and 60. Line 61, also a TST adjustment, 61 and 62, so those are ongoing. Line 63 is in emergency management. This is an upgrade to a failing audio-visual system. So it is a grant and it would have been adjusted in maintenance level. Line 64 is for community planning. They've taken in revenue and they're only going to spend a part of it. So it's revenue, so it would have been adjusted in maintenance level. We're just going to follow up with this one and see what happened with it. And then lines 65 and 66, also TST. So that's the list.
I have to contact Kurt Harden though. He received a grant for failing audio and visual equipment. I might apply for something like that too.
You could pay for my new glasses.
Well, 8 pages, that's not bad.
Right.
That's good work.
Not bad at all. So with that, I would suggest that we wrap up for today. I don't have anything ready that we could start for just the next half hour, especially without Commissioner Edwards. And we'll pick it up tomorrow with capital budget and the associated budgets in Public Works and Central Services. And then after that, I'm looking at probably moving into Public Health.
Beautiful.
Build some sand sheds tomorrow.
I won't bring it up, but I know you will,
We better
Ty.
do that. We better do that this afternoon if we're gonna do it.
That's right, the big sandbox.
The sand shed is on a reappropriation, so you might not hear about it.
Yeah, you
funny.
may not hear about that one since that has been already on its way.
Yep.
All right.
All right.
Okay. Thank
Everybody
you.
I'm looking at, thank you very much. Anything, did you have anything else, Robin?
Nope.
Okay.
Just have a nice evening.
Ty, anything?
So before you leave tomorrow on the capital conversation, just to give you a heads up, I will bring the City of Rainier request that I walked you through this past Tuesday.
Park impact fees.
That could be the potential funding source.
Okay.
And that, because that request is not included on all the information that has been presented to you so far.
No, it came in very late.
Yeah, so I'm just doing my due diligence.
Good job. Thank you all very much. And again, Heidi Thompson, Chief, thank you very much for your hard work too. Appreciate it.
Yep, and all the rest of the budget staff who've been listening in. We've
All of
Thank
them.
you. Thank you.
I've had many notes throughout the day, so.
Oh, beautiful.
Yep.
And I love seeing you all too. So thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned. Bye-bye.